I will be presenting to you a case study for the project Reform, a New Life for Old Species. So basically, the focus of this project is to be able to renovate, rehabilitate, or and what is it, reform an old building to give it a new purpose. Now, when you think of reform in the architectural sense, what words come to mind? You have rehabilitate, renovate, remodel, redesign. All these can fall under the word reform. Now, when it comes to reform, we have three major types. We have complete overhaul, adaptive reuse, and restoration and extension. Now, complete overhaul is when you basically can't recognize the project from what it was previously, like total, both interior and exterior, complete overhaul. Adaptive reuse is an existing structure is there, and you don't necessarily change the exterior, but you find a way to reuse it. For example, now silos, those grain structures when we used to sell rice. A good number of people all around the world, they're using it as residential projects now. As adaptive reuse, you adapt to what you have and you use it for residential. Then restoration and extension. So that's when you have an old building and it's so historically treasured. You don't want to touch, you don't want to change. So you restore it. But it needs to meet current standards, current needs. So that's where extension comes in. So these are the three types of reform. Now, I'm going to take you through, we're going to be looking at complete overhaul in depth, but I will show you briefly adaptive reuse and extension and restoration and extension. So first, we have adaptive reuse. This is an example. This is before a factory before renovation in the 1930s. And this is after renovation as a lab in 2012. So you can tell they really didn't change the exterior of the building. It basically looks the same, maybe a little bit of changes in front or at the sign, but it's basically the same. They didn't change much. But the interior, this was before the interior factory in the 1930s. And this is the lab here. So it was reused, it was adapted and reused. And the next example is for restoration and extension. This is a fire station in London in 1910. It was left for, I think, up to 14 years as gold. And this is it now in 2022. So you can tell, can you really see the difference? Not really. But then you look here, behind it, that structure wasn't existing before because it is now this. So this was extended behind that building to meet residential needs. So it's no longer a fire station because they extended to its residential needs. Now going in depth, let's talk about complete overhaul. And the case study for this reform project, I'm giving Shanjing Village Hall. This is community hall in Shenzhen, China. It is basically a way the community brought forward to reunite a disused diesel power plant into a public space for the community. Now we should note before going forward that the Shenzhen people and the Shanjing people are very spiritual, which you understand what we're going on. So the client was the community and they wanted to rejuvenate the old diesel power plant into a vibrant public space for the users. Now, the design challenges they faced: structural integrity, cultural integration, and spatial adaptation. And this is why this was the building that never to work is. They got two diesel power plant in the 1980s. It was abandoned for a long time, but they wanted to reuse it. So when it comes to number one, structural integrity, very old. Most of the structures won't be good anymore to work with. They needed to solve that. The cultural integration is a basic building. There's nothing cultural about it. So they need to find a way to put in their picture. And finally, the spatial adaptation. A big a big power plant that is when find ways to separate the areas that will work for the correctness. This is the after renovation first. No. Area view. Now let's go in depth. Design approach. The architects didn't want to completely throw it away. They wanted to have someone still to buy his way. So they held the concept of spiritual reverts of merit. Please remember that those people are very spiritual on board there. And their central influence was the industrial building that was there, which was the power plants, and the traditional ancestry that they are trying to implement together. That's what's brought together what was sold there. The sustainable feature, the most sustainable feature here is the use of this demolished building to rebuild, not just to scatter it out. Now, once here is only the structural elements, the base, the columns, and the foundation. And what is left. But they decided to reuse it. The construction materials are the recycled concrete that is here. That makes it sustainable. And the steel and glass which they used in the new construction. Now, a unique construction detail is that, and I mentioned before, what remains of the previous work is all the structural elements, the base, the columns, and the foundation. The impact and success. So this area serves as a community for the villagers to do general gatherings, or if someone wants to offer services to them. It has really put together a place where everyone can come together and do their own thing. It has impacted the place positively as it enriches creativity, recreation, and other services. Okay. Now let's talk about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats. Now, strengths. Number one, cultural heritage. So I'm sure you've been wondering, it's still a basic building. How did they put their culture into it? Well, an ancestral home for their people has three main things. One, a moon gate, which you can see here. This circle is called a moon gate. There's also a shadow wall. Yes. A shadow wall is like a perforated wall, normally made of blue, but because this was an integration of the industrial and the cultural aspects, so made of metal. The shadow wall is a perforated wall that when light shines through it, it creates this kind of movement, which they believe can lead you to the spiritual world. Sustainable design. Now, if you notice in the previous depth, it's completely covered in a glass facade that allows natural light to enter. And also, in the remaining concrete structure that was left behind, walls were perforated to also allow for natural ventilation. Make a circle here. Number is a very rectangular window that they perforated circles to allow natural ventilation. Flexible spaces. Now, from this section, you can see that there's a main hall here, which can be used for a variety of purposes. It can also be cut down to shorter more than one just big garden. So the big hall that was designed allows them to be able to flexibly change the spaces and they need. And the strong concepts. So remember, it was spirituality, build spirituality to know. So that can be seen throughout. You don't need this questioning. The ruins are built, and it's a strong concept that carries on throughout. You know, all this is not expensive, or this. Then the weaknesses, structural constraints. So because of the existing building that was put there before, they had to reinforce it like times 2, which led to more money being used, more funding being used for the project. They said as a university future, because of the old building, they could not put features for the disabled. in some of the areas. Some have it, but some areas are not accessible to them. Then environmental challenges. So the purpose of the open way is designed to build it that there is a lot of natural air going through, and that when it comes to rain, it can seriously affect nature. It's basically useless, I would say, when it rains or when there's a typhoon, and that's area it's prone to rain and typhoon. Opportunities. Tourism, public-private partnerships, which is private individuals coming to use this space and bringing in more funds. Expansion of services, the same thing. More people coming to use this space because it's a flexible space, so it has a allowance for a lot of people to come and use it. Threats, operation and maintenance costs. So the cost of the old building, they constantly have to maintain its structural condition, but it's so old that you don't know if or when it kind of built. Then also the design itself, because of the ventilations that were because that it puts all around, water entering the building and damaging is very likely. That's operational matter. And extreme weather, which same thing as weather. It's a very open building where weather can easily damage. So this is the gallery of different views of building, aerial. It's like this is the main case I was talking about, and the shadow wall calculators. Okay. I just picture put together some slides to like for you to understand what we were talking about, different kind of reform. So from this picture, can you tell what kind of reform this is? Whether it is adaptive reuse, complete overhaul, or restoration and extension. Restoration and extension.
Yeah, respiration and identity.
Because of this.
I mean, the balcony, that long balcony also going. Or
Yeah.
just so.
Okay. Now this a museum in South Africa. What do you think this is? This is before. This is after.
I like a full mine also. That
Because but no, I've mentioned
how I will silos.
yes.
Like oh,
These are great set. So what would you call this?
there's release.
Adaptive. Here. So as architects, we should know that one of the most sustainable things you can do is towards circular. NK.